Hey traders, welcome to episode 2 of the market structure series. In this episode, I will be talking about real life examples. So we will be covering some real charts and doing analysis on them. If you did not watch episode 1, I highly recommend you do so, because there we talk about the basics, talk about some clean examples, also some more realistic examples, where we lay the foundation for trend analysis and market structure in general. Let's get started. I marked up a first example on the chart right here, just to refresh your memory. What we see right here is first we create a high, right here. And that's just because our analysis starts from there, right? So it's not really a structural point. We just start analyzing from there. Then we have a leg down, and then we apparently create a low. This could also be the low, but it's an equal low, so it doesn't really matter. We could mark that as an equal low, this being the low. Then we have our leg up, and then we create a higher point breaking structure compared to that high that we have right there, which we call a change of character. But don't worry about that just yet. We will be talking about that a bit later on. Then we have a leg down again. This leg down creates a low and then moves up again. Once we break structure compared to that high, we then know that that high was our higher high and that the low was our higher low. So at that point, we identified the leg, the high, the low after the break of structure. I hope that refreshes your memory from the previous episode. If not, I highly recommend you check that out again. And then here again, we have our higher high, higher low, because of the break of structure that we saw. So none of these points, this will never be our higher low. This will never be our higher low. Neither will this, because we never broke structure. We did go up. We could say, yeah, this is a higher high, but it is not, because it is not a higher high. We never broke structure. So therefore, we never identified our low or our high just yet. Okay. That's it for the bullish example. Now what I'll do, I'm going to pick a chart. I'm going to leave it blank. And you guys should try and draw up. It can be imaginary, doesn't matter. Pause the video soon and take a few minutes to mark up those points yourself for a bullish trend. I already drew them out for us because it takes a long time to manually mark them for you. I don't want to bore you guys. So there we go. I hope the stuff that you marked out is going to be somewhat similar. So let's explain this. We started with a high we created. We then created a low. And then we broke structure. We actually broke structure right here already, but we didn't get a candle close. If we don't get a candle close, it's not a clean break of structure for me. So boom, we got it, a candle close. We have our new potential high. We then create a low. Then we have another break of structure with a candle close. So then we know this is a higher high and this is a higher low. We respected those previous zones. And we continue, leg down, creating a potential low, going high, breaking structure, making that potential low an actual higher low, and then this a higher high. We then continue up again, down again, creating a new potential low, breaking structure, making that higher low, higher high. You get the point. Cool. I hope you got this right. If not, I really do recommend that you go back and watch the previous episode, episode 1. And now I'm going to talk about somewhat of a new concept, the change of character. So it's one thing to identify that we're in a certain trend and to trade with that trend, for example, that will give you an edge on itself. But we need to keep in mind that a trend can change. A trend will not last forever. So how do we know when a trend is about to change? Well, actually, it's very simple as soon as we identified those higher lows and higher highs in this case. We have this higher low, and if the trend is bullish, we are to respect this zone. That's what we expect. If we respect this higher low, then we will still be bullish. But as soon as we violate it, the trend is showing weakness. That's a big sign of weakness. and it can possibly indicate a trend change as well. So as soon as we violate it, we can mark it as a change of character. And if we have a change of character, usually the trend either flips or consolidates. In this case, the trend actually flips. I marked out some points here, but I suggest you do that yourself, practice it. This is basically the same but then for a bearish trend. So that's a change of character. And there are multiple ways to identify weakness of a trend. And there are multiple ways to identify that change of character. On my screen right now, there are two ways to identify that a trend is likely to change or has already changed. So the first way on the left right here, that's following. We have a nice bullish trend showing clean highs, lows, higher lows, then another final higher high after a break of structure, and then change of character. We violate that previous low. At that point, we have a change of character. We then go back up to respect that final high that was made and then break structure. At this point, we can pretty safely say that we are now in a bearish trend. Another example is what I talked about in the beginning of the video and also in the live example. That's the trend weakness. So what is trend weakness? Well, let's see. We have a nice bullish trend. We see that we violate those previous highs pretty badly. So the break of structure, as soon as we have that, we have a really clean high, new high. And then the second break of structure right here, we create another high, but that high is not really that convincing. It's pretty low. And then we return really closely to the previous low that we created, respecting it, then going back up, failing to break that previous high, and then continuing lower. At this point, we can safely say that there is a lot of trend weakness and there is a big tendency to the downside. So that would be indicating very bearish structure. All right, now for a bearish example. So this is clearly showing a weakening trend. What we have here is a downtrend. Imagine that this has been going on for a while. We have a nice little downtrend, and we trend up again. We have a break of structure. We create our final low. Then we go up again. We violate that previous high that we created, so we have a change of character. We then create a high, then go lower again, respecting that previous low, that lowest point that we created, and then a break of structure. Once we have this, we can assume that the trend is probably going to become bullish. Now for the second example, which is the same as it was for the bullish, but now the bearish variant. So we have a downtrend, we have our final break of structure, but the break of structure is rather minor. We don't really have a very convincing break of structure. We don't really make any decent lows. And then we move up again. We respect that previous high that was created, then move down again, but do not violate that final low that we created. And then we have our change of character based on a respect of that low and a violation of that high that we created to create a potential new high. And at this point, we can also assume that the trend is very likely to end or become a bullish trend. Now we know all the bits and pieces that are required for basic market structure. We can move on to a bit more of a complex example that uses all the criteria and all the things we've learned where it all fits in together. So here we see that price in overall is kind of consolidating. It doesn't really have a clear direction, but still we can catch the behavior of the market and see whether it's bullish or bearish by these short periods of trending times it has. As we can see in the middle, for example, it has a bullish trend, and you could still catch some pretty nice trades here. If you look at where the character changes, you could catch a low and then continue to trail it up to a high, for example. So let's cover this one. We start off by making a low, we then proceed to make a high. Then we are kind of swerving in the middle of those 2 points in that range, creating an equal high. And before that, we create a lower low. But as you can see, this low is not really that convincing. There's not a lot of momentum behind that. We then create that equal high to go down, which can indicate that price might actually be thinking about consolidating or even changing its trend. So I would not really touch anything right here. Until then, you receive a break of structure. Been wicking around for a little bit. Then we move to the downside again. to then create a lower high, preceded by a lower low where we had that break of structure. Then right here, I marked this in green because this is actually part of a bullish leg. And why is that? Well, at this point, we have a change of character. We can then see that that's the lower high and this is the lower low. And I would say this lower low is part of the start of a bullish trend. So we then proceed to make a higher high and a higher low based off of this break of structure. We then have a higher high and a lower low based on the change of character. So we can assume that we are now bearish once again. We create this lower high after that, and then we have a break of structure making that the lower high. And then we can assume that this might be a lower low if we continue analyzing this trend. So this was a pretty difficult example. I think this is what we see in the market quite often, but usually it's a bit more cleanly trending. If you put all these puzzle pieces together, you can really see what the market is doing. You will never take trades in the wrong direction. In the next episode, I will mainly be talking about market structure if we look at different time periods, right? So different time frames. Let's say we have a 4-hour. How do we analyze a 4-hour on the 15 minutes? So how do we trade within such 4-hour candles to catch those smaller moves and identify the trends within that? So if that's something you're interested in, make sure to subscribe, leave a like, and turn on the bell notification thing so you actually get the message that there's a new video out. Other than that, thank you so much for watching, and catch you in the next episode. Bye-bye.